they're the impetus behind this. There's no doubt behind this. Violent Crimes Unit has been in existence since 1974. One of the advantages to that is we have all the cases of all the horrible, heinous offenses that have occurred in Tuscaloosa County since 1974, and we have them all. Of course, in that group of cases, there are many successes, but there are also many unsolved cases. One of the cases that has weighed heavily on this unit's mind over generations of investigators is the case of Shonda Phaler. Shonda Phaler was an outgoing university student at the time of her disappearance. She was last school, which has since been demolished and paved over. The swimming pool was available to faculty, staff, and students, and was a very popular place. On June the 10th, it was confirmed through multiple avenues that she was at the swimming pool. That is without question. That later that evening, her family missed her and could not locate her, reported her missing. Within the next few hours, the University Police Department realized, along with the missing persons report, that they had checked her vehicle that night that was still in the parking lot of the swimming pool. No one at the swimming pool, of all the dozens that were interviewed time and time again after this fact, ever reported seeing any type of an altercation, an argument, or an abduction. They all had seen Shonda at the pool, but no one knew how she left. But again, her car was found there. Local law enforcement began looking for her. Unfortunately, 4 days later, she was discovered by fishermen in the Black Warrior River near the Peterson area of the river. The way that she was found is clearly indicative of foul play. Many facts or details of this case have been published in the old paper and press media and now in online fashions for the last 38 years. So I'm not going to get into any gruesome details. But I can say that I am just one of a long line of investigative teams that have revisited this case since 1987. We called y'all here today because we want to put out a few items of interest that we think the public needs to be aware of. And if there's anyone out there, and I know in my heart that there is, if there's anyone that is listening to this or reading this online that knows anything about this heinous crime, please come forward. Okay? The Sheriff's Office, along with some technologies that we obtained in the last year, along with our crime scene unit and with the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences in Montgomery and at Hoover, have begun an intense evaluation of all the physical evidence involved in this case. Some of these techniques are modern state-of-the-art techniques that have never been done before in the state of Alabama. This is currently ongoing. We have multiple items being tested or have been tested, and we are awaiting results, and we're hopeful that there's going to be leads that come from this testing. Back in 1987, the governor of Alabama, or the governor's office, issued a reward for information in this case of $10,000. I have confirmed that that reward is still outstanding and is valid. So anyone who can come forward that leads to an arrest, with information that leads to an arrest, will be eligible for that reward of $10,000. And also, lastly, it has been 38 years since this has occurred. 38 years. And if there's anyone out there that has any information that's been holding on to it for 38 years, now is the time to come forward. It has long been believed by investigators that the suspect in this case knew Shonda and was not a stranger. Invariably, there are people who have personal information about suspects that can help solve crimes. Eyewitness testimony is just as important as forensic evidence. Sometimes it is even more valuable. This includes observations before and after a crime. And you need not have been present at a crime to be a witness. I want everybody to understand that. If you know of facts of a person or persons that was involved in this, that were doing things before or after, and this would include personal observations, conversations with persons that give us evidence of the persons that were responsible for this, that can be just as valuable as forensic evidence. The witness information can corroborate are forensic leads and vice versa. So forensic leads, physical evidence can be corroborated by these witness statements and vice versa. This can all be useful, again, even if you did not personally participate or witness the crime. So today I just want to make sure that if there's anyone out there that they understand that along with this new testing and a $10,000 reward and the 38 years that passed, if you have any information, now is the time to come forward. Now is the time. Now is the time to provide closure for Shanda and her family. Now is the time that any information you provide is worth $10,000. And now is the time to do the right thing. And we ask that you come forward in any way that you feel comfortable. If you need to call me direct, my number will be attached to this press release. It's 205-464-8692. That's my direct number to me, Captain Jack Kennedy. If you know of a law enforcement member in your family or a friend or a neighbor that you're more comfortable with approaching, go talk to that law enforcement officer for advice on how best to get that information to us. But if you have that information and you know for a fact that it is good information, bring it to us now. Y'all have any questions?
Captain, any idea, even though this is unsolved, 38 years after the fact, what the motive may have been?
Yeah, that's all part of the investigation, and we're not going to release anything. This is a 38-year-old investigation that has had numerous leads, numerous suspects, and hundreds of theories. So I'm not going to be able to go into anything like that. What I do know is what we know for a fact that we have in our case files and in our physical evidence now. I know what testing has been done in the past. I know what testing that we're undergoing now. And I know in my heart that there's people that are listening to this right now that can help this investigation. I know it. We all know it. We all know it. And it's been 38 years, so if there's been something that's been holding you back, whether this has involved a family member or a significant other, right? Someone with whom you're in a relationship with, or a friend of yours, or if you just aren't 100% sure, you just thought it wasn't any of your business and you didn't want to get involved, today's the day. Now's the time. Contact us immediately.
You mentioned $10,000. Is that just for the arrest or the arrest and conviction of the person?
I believe it's just for the arrest, but I'd have to check on that. It's through the governor's office.
Is that the only reward still outstanding?
That's the only.
Others at the time?
Yeah, there may be others at the time. That one is still outstanding. I also like to point out that $10,000 was worth a lot more money in '87 than it is now. And we're going to reinitiate with the governor's office to see if there's any way that we can get that raised up to an appropriate level.
And you said numerous suspects throughout the years. Are there any current suspects or people that?
Well, I mean, of course we have suspects, but that doesn't mean that we have a defendant. I want a defendant. I think everybody does. So, and this case is like any other case. Until it is resolved, we don't know the exact course of events that happened. But we do know what we do know, and is that Shanda was the victim of a crime. She died unlawfully, or was killed unlawfully, and her body was disposed of in a disrespectful and unlawful manner. And the time is now. Now is the time for someone to come forward and help us close this case.
Do you have reason to believe that those suspects are still around the Tuscaloosa area?
I'm not going to get into anything that we have in the investigation. Like I said, I'm not here for anyone to conduct an investigation. I don't want people in the public to be digging things up and creating their own theories. I know people like doing that. I like doing that. It's human nature. What we're here for today is for a person or persons that have direct knowledge of this offense or this suspect or what happened to Shanda to contact us. Okay?
You've done a great job explaining everything, saying that now is the time and all that. But if I may ask, why now? Why today? Is there something special about today?
Well, for the three things that I brought up. We have new modern forensic testing going on that was not available to us until just to this year, really, or to the last 18 months. We have that going on, and we're hopeful we get something from that. We were able to confirm that this reward is valid, but the other part is 38 years is a long time. Okay, our victim has passed away. Members of her family are passing away. Witnesses are passing away, and our defendant may pass away. And I think that the best result for this case is that we're able to make a case and take a defendant into custody before he passes away. So now's the time. That's why we're here as a plea.
You've had a pretty good record of solving these difficult cases. Are you optimistic you'll be able to solve this one?
Every case is different. I think I mentioned to another reporter the other day that everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. Some investigators or investigative teams have different strengths and weaknesses. As the generations go, investigations are conducted differently. But one thing I can say by reviewing all these, what we call cold cases, is that everyone who participated in these investigations worked as hard as they could and were as duty driven as anyone else I've ever seen. And if we had all the forensic testing and electronics, electronic intelligence and cameras and video surveillance and cell phone towers and all the stuff that we have today in '87, then I would say that I would be extremely optimistic that this person would never have gotten away with this crime. But that's not when it happened. Today's not when it happened. It happened in 1987. And back then, those investigators relied heavily on personal relationships in the community, personal relationships with their families and their witnesses, and that all of that was recorded dutifully and is in our case files. I've been through and read hundreds of statements. I've watched dozens of videos and listened to audio recordings, and it is evident that they cared deeply about this case and were desperately trying to come to a conclusion. So, yeah, every case is on its own, and I can't speak to this. I just know that if someone out there has personal information, again, not a theory, if you believe it will help our investigation, call us. Let us vet that out and decide what will happen. But 1987, 38 years ago, that's going to be what we need.
Were you a member of the Sheriff's Department back then?
No, sir. No, sir. I was probably in the 9th or 8th grade, I think. So yeah. Though I do remember the Riverside Pool. So I started college in 1992 at UA. So.
Outside of this happening in 1987, what were the biggest challenges back then, and are those challenges still present today in terms of maybe lack of information or lack of evidence existing?
Yeah, like I said, back then they had physical evidence, they had witnesses, right? There was a few other things that would come into play, and of course I wasn't in law enforcement then, so I can't really speak to how well or what their number one thing was. But I think one thing that they had back then that there was much more of a sense of community. More people knew folks, more people kept up with their folks. It was before cell phones. So many people spent their days visiting other people, seeing other people, going to hang out with other people, going to work with other people. Shanda would study with other people. They would go to study halls, study groups. They would have plans well in advance for the weekend. A lot of the cases that we look in back there, it's amazing talking to especially young people how much they had planned out for the next like 5 or 6 days. They knew, and that kind of thing. And that was in today's world, we don't have that so much. But what we do have are little devices that track everywhere we go or every phone call we make, and apparently we're incapable of keeping anything to ourselves. We have to let somebody know immediately what we've done or where we're at, and we have all those things. Plus, obviously cameras are available at gas stations and businesses. We have lots of things like that to fill in the gap of that. But like I said, none of that was available in '87. So. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to end that press conference here, and then I'm going to leave these up here. As for a picture, I'm going to email this out to everyone, and the picture I'm using I did get online. I think it had been used a couple of times, but actually y'all got it right there. It's a really good picture.